From WBBZ-TV Sports, it's time to beat the champ. Now, here are your hosts, Paul Peck and Sue Navoitsky.
Well, hi, everybody. I'm Paul Peck, along with Hall of Fame bowler Sue Navoitsky, and welcome to this special edition of Beat the Champ. We have had a lot of fun over the last 5 years, taking this sport to another level, seeing all the outstanding bowlers in Western New York, and seeing the reaction from the bowling community has been great as well.
Absolutely. There's so many great bowlers in this community that don't do this for a living, but still come out here and perform on the weekends as if they do it for a living. And, and as far as the community goes, I get so much input from everyone, and we have seen so many great matches throughout the years that it's fun to actually look back and see a couple of them from time to time.
All right, so here we go. It's the best of Beat the Champ.
I'm with Andy Redick, our returning champion to Beat the Champ Week 2. You were the only lefty to bowl last week. Do you think that had a part in that win?
Yeah, I definitely do. The lanes changed a lot for the righties, and I was able to just stay on my own side and do my own thing, and I'm going to try and do that today again.
And I noticed that the top two scores in the tournament, 801, 803, were both scored by left-handers. Do you think that there's a better carry percentage on that side?
No, we're just a little bit better on the left side, I think, that's all.
And there you have it. We're going to hear a lot about that. Okay, well, we're looking forward to watching you bowl, and good luck today. I'm on Beat the Champ with Justin Sokolowski, a new face here. We haven't seen you. And you bowled 300 in qualifying, so I would have to say that you're a fan of this condition. Did you find them easy scoring throughout the entire tournament?
Oh, yeah, I did. For some reason, I guess I'm just a fan of wood. That seems to be a common theme. I bowl pretty well. So, we'll go out and see what happens today.
Yeah, well, there's certainly types of bowling, styles of bowling that do favor the wood lane conditions. So it's good to hear that you do, and we wish you luck today and have a good show.
Thank you.
All right.
We're ready to get it started with match number one. The challenger is Justin Sokowlowski, and our returning champ is this man right here, Andy Rettig from Hamburg, making his 8th appearance on Beat the Champ, a overall record of 7 wins and 4 losses. That 7th win coming at the end of last week's show when he knocked off Mike Zarcone in a rather crazy, interesting match that saw Andy win 238 to 160. And Andy is a good, solid bowler, one of the better bowlers in Western New York, and we'll see what kind of run he can go on, Sue.
Yep, again, having that side to himself, I think is going to be, it's going to be his match to lose, I'm going to have to assume. I mean, the righties are definitely moving around the lane and looking for their something consistent, that'll stay for the entire game, as opposed to going away. Like for Mike, the shot went away from him.
Right. It's the debut of Justin Sokowlowski, 20 years old, from East Amherst, and off to a good start. Justin had a 300 game in qualifying as part of his overall effort that makes him the number 4 seed here. So it's always good to see new, young faces and names, and Justin qualifies as that.
Right, and we've never really seen him throw a ball on TV before, and he's approaching the lane differently than we saw Mike do it. So, for that reason, we may see a little bit more consistency because he's a lot further to the right and he's playing up the outside of the lane as opposed to trying to cover all those boards on the inside.
Big high arm swing, as you saw from Justin Sokowlowski, been bowling since he's 5 years old, bowls regularly at Brad Angelo Lanes in their Thursday night league. Meanwhile, Andy Rettig, always a regular in the Saturday travel league around Western New York, along with bowling early in the week at Abbott Lanes as well. So Andy's one of those guys who's always around at the big events and has done very well in the open hour in years past. So matter of fact, 3 top 10s in the open hour for Andy Rettig.
Oh, we all know that's a great accomplishment.
We are joined here for week number 2 by the owner of Lucky Lanes here in Fredonia, Paul Nosek. And Paul, always good to have you as part of the show. And we had a lot to talk about in week number 1. I can't imagine what we're going to quiz you with here in week 2.
Yeah, it was an interesting week 1 for sure. I do remember Justin, when he was bowling in the qualifier, was kind of struggling on a pair and trying to find it, and then he switched over to the next pair, and that's when he shot the 300. So it comes and goes when you're bowling. You just never know who.
So Andy misses the 1-pin spare there in frame number 2. We've got a little bit of a rash of open frames here in our first 4 matches, haven't we? Been more of them than we are used to seeing on this show.
Well, you can see the momentum of bowling and how it goes from one to the other. I mean, in the last match, he had that match all to himself. He wasn't challenged in it, and he could get loose and just bowl his game and stay clean, and now you got a different situation. This guy comes out and posts a double up on you right away, and again, the frame of mind has so much to do with the end result.
Puts more pressure on you.
Look at the impressive average for Justin Sokolowski at 238.
Wow.
That 300 game that he bowled in qualifying, the second of his young bowling career. High series of 780. So still looking for the first career 800 series, and it's off to a good start here in this one with strikes in the first 3 frames.
Well, we'll have to talk a little bit about him. He comes from Brad Angelo Lanes. He's probably been, influenced or coached in some way by Brad, and that's an entirely different approach. It's almost its own philosophy about bowling when you get involved with Brad's teachings, and
right.
I see a lot of storm balls in this man's arsenal, which leads me to believe that he's been influenced by Brad, who's always been on the Storm team.
That's 4 in a row for Justin Sokolowski. A storm of flying pins here through the first 4 frames.
This feels like a good time to take a short break. We'll be right back with more action on Beat the Champ.
Instant replay on Beat the Champ is brought to you by Transit Lanes and Keglers. Join us for bowling, food, and drinks.
Welcome back to Beat the Champ. Let's get back to the action here on WBBZ-TV.
Have you noticed, and I think we've noticed this throughout other sports, that a younger generation thinks about the game a little differently, maybe thinks more about it, maybe analyzes it more. Not to say that bowlers of your generation didn't do that, but we've seen that in all different levels of sports, whether it's football or basketball or hockey. The younger generation starts earlier, trains, quote unquote, better, and thinks the game differently. Have you noticed that with the younger bowlers here?
Yeah, I think there's actually more to think about now. It's a different game with the new equipment. The oil's different. The bowling balls are certainly different. So that makes everything a lot different that you have to think about. The carry. I mean, we didn't worry about carry down in the 70s. That wasn't. It's just a whole different game, and the equipment is able to do more. And in the drilling patterns, you can do so much more with those. How the ball reads the pattern, coming off the pattern. How different. There's so much more to it. So you have to.
You almost have to be a physics major and a mathematician to figure this stuff out.
6 in a row for Justin Sokolowski, as you got a glimpse before, and you will momentarily here, of the Castellone Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram scoreboard manned by Janelle Sabin. It is nothing but X's across the board for Justin through the first 6 frames, and that is putting some serious heat on Andy Rettig as he makes the turn here towards frame number 6. Well, again, like technology has taken over all parts of our lives, and there's no doubt that it has taken over this sport as well too. And it's not a matter of just taking it over, it's a matter of understanding what it means and what it does.
Well,
and Andy just can't get that 10 pin to go.
And here you got to look at like a Gary Kinyon, who we're going to see upcoming on this week's
Next
show,
match.
who is who's seen the game for a very long time and has seen these changes. Back when we used to watch, the Channel 7 ABC Sports telecast, it was about rubber balls, and an LT48 would come out, or just prior to urethane. I mean, urethane would have been, now today urethane's old school, and you got to figure out how to fit that back. Now that's back again, and we got to figure out how to use it. But they did more with their hands, and they did more, it was more of a physical thing you would learn, and now it's not about your hand anymore, it's about having the right ball, and who figures that out is going to win.
We want to welcome a new sponsor here to Beat the Champ from right here in Fredonia, Owl Homes of Fredonia, signing on to be one of our great sponsors here on the Beat the Champ show, and we welcome them to be part of our always fun and entertaining traveling bowling road show throughout Western New York. Andy Rettig in frame 7. And somebody put some crazy glue on the bottom of pin number 10 for Andy.
All of a sudden, we'd watch this happen in the first match to Jason, where all of a sudden he just started leaving the 10 pin, and it's the angle of entry into the pocket, and that's where he's at right now.
That's unusual for a lefty to leave that many 10s, too.
It is, very.
Sevens
It's like
are
leaving
there.
a bunch of 7s on the right-hand side.
And for the third consecutive frame, he will pick up that single pin frame. And now Justin Sokolowski back up for frame number 7. Perfect through the first 6 here at Lucky Lanes. First match of the day here. Week number 2 at Fredonia's Lucky Lanes. Great spot here, just off the throughway, exit number 59 here. Quick left off the throughway, and you are right in the parking lot of Lucky Lanes here in Fredonia. And that ring 10 will not ring down the 10 pin, so that's the first non-strike for Justin. And there you get an updated look at our score off the Castellano Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram scoreboard. Don't forget that we're every top qualifier in our round of 24, and those are going on this weekend for next month's stop in Jamestown. That top qualifier wins a television valued at $500 from our friends at Dirt Cheap TV. Qualifying going on later today and tomorrow as we begin to set up for next month's shows at the Jamestown Bowling Company. The top 24 roll-off will be next weekend.
Right. No, the next qualifiers will be Sunday, April 8th, tomorrow, 10, 1, and 4. Now, that was a great spare by him because you know that he hasn't had to shoot anything other than he had strikes for the first 6. So.
Yeah, as we were discussing on last week's show, when you throw in strikes, you don't even have to throw anywhere different, and all of a sudden that presents itself, and you have to make the shot.
And that was a huge 9th frame strike there for Justin as well, because it's enabled him to just have to make a spare in the 10th to win if Andy does go ahead and strikes out here. But Andy's going to need them all to even put any pressure on Justin whatsoever.
And now back on the other side, as more typical for a lefty, the 7 pin holds up for Andy.
And that's going to end Andy's reign as the champion, and we're going to have a new champion with Justin.
Yeah, how about that? A debut victory for Justin Sokolowski, and he is going to move on, and we'll have a little disparity in age and experience in match number 2 against Gary Kinyon, but Andy Redick is able to grab his 4th consecutive spare, and he'll move on to the 9th frame here to just try to finish strong here. And we talked an awful lot about Andy's win over Mike Zarcone a week ago, and Andy just being so steady and solid just did that in order to get a couple of wins. And here, steady and solid, but not quite enough. So nice strike there for Andy in frame number 9, but it's going to be a victory for Justin Sokolowski here, and he will move on. So it'll be Justin getting his first Beat the Champ victory with an impressive performance here at Lucky Lanes in Fredonia. We'll talk to Andy Rettig and get you ready for match number 2. When we return, you're watching Beat the Champ. Final score of this one, Justin Sokolowski with the win, 246 to 213. Kind of ran into a buzzsaw. He rattled off those first 6 strikes, and you kind of knew what you were dealing with for a guy making his debut on the show, right?
Yeah, he did a great job. Bowled fantastic, and hats off to him. Threw the ball well.
You had a couple of unusual of those single pin leaves. Where do you think that came from?
Bad luck, I guess. I made some good shots, just didn't strike today.
All right, Paul, make him feel a little better.
A little money for your efforts. Congratulations, threw the ball well. Thanks for bowling.
Yep. Thanks for having us, Paul.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Always good to see Andy on the show. He got a win over Mike Zarcone last week, and we know he'll be back because he always is one of our serious regulars here on Beat the Champ. We'll see more of Andy Rettig. We're going to see more of Justin Sokolowski. Next match coming up against Gary Kinyon. Stick around. That's next on Beat the Champ.
I'm here on Beat the Champ with Gary Kenyon. Gary, 2 months in a row.
Yes.
Get the bug?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I figured bowl against the old guys. Now it's right to bowl against the young guys.
And very successful, as you always are. Always fun to watch you bowl. What's the difference between bowling at Transit Lanes and bowling here in Fredonia?
I had a lot more ball reaction down the lane. I had a little more pop at the back end of the lane. I think it's going to help me in qualifying for sure. And I hope I have the same look today.
All right, well, I wish you luck, and we look forward to watching you bowl.
I look forward to it too. Thanks.
Well, we've got quite a disparity in age and experience for match number 2 here, with the 20-year-old Justin Sokolowski taking on the venerable 67-year-old Gary Kinyon here in this match, and that should make things very interesting because there's nobody who knows the sport here in Western New York better than Gary, and based on what we've seen early from Justin, he is an opponent to be worthy of and afraid of. So this should be very interesting. Coming off his debut win with a 246, Justin Sokolowski gets a strike in the first frame.
Well, we have they warm up right in front of us here. We get to see, a little snapshot of how these guys are approaching the lane, and we saw Justin run into a little bit of trouble, leaving some 710s while he was practicing, and so he's had to make yet another adjustment. But we're still going to see these two, even though their styles are very different, really attack the lane in the same area of the lane.
5th appearance on the show for Gary Kenyon, 2 wins and 3 losses. Haven't seen Gary in a while, since Grand Island, which is about 6 months ago or so. And of course, the always interesting tidbit about Gary, he was a 5-time winner on Beat the Champ back in the 1980s when he was a young bowler, maybe somewhere around Justin's age back then.
Right. Well, we did see him on the show at Transit, but he was on the 4th show.
Correct.
Which
he was on our senior special, right?
It was, and I've gotten a lot of feedback in the community about that show. It was a great match there. It ended up there between John Masiello and Mike Falero, and it was a fun 4th show.
Well, because they're all familiar names that everybody who bowls in Western New York has bowled with, against, or has certainly watched before.
And it's nice to have the variety with the young people, but like your show too, where we're going to see some of the familiar faces that from the show actually, instead of bowling against each other, be rooting for each other.
Right.
So spare strike to start things off for Gary Kinyon, and now back to frame number 2 for Justin. As we mentioned, just 20 years old, from East Amherst, New York. This is his Beat the Champ debut, and one of the reasons he was able to make the show down here was a perfect game in qualifying, the 2nd of his bowling career. How many does Mike Zarcone has? 103. Justin has 2, but that's just getting started.
And he's just a young 20.
And there's a little bit of a tricky challenge on the split for Justin to deal with here in frame number 2.
And this is just sort of more of the same that we've seen on the right-hand side, where if they throw it good and stay through it, good results. Not an even guaranteed carry, but then when you're off a little bit, it leaves very difficult spares to pick up, not just your routine 8-pin, 9-pin, 4-pin, 2-pin.
So he'll get one of those, and that will be an open in the 2nd for Justin Sokolowski, and he'll slide over to lane number 7 here to pick things up in frame number 3. So again, early in the match, that's good, but I'm sure Gary Kenyon is sitting over there going, okay, okay, kid, okay, kid. Let's see how you bounce back. We'll all see how he bounces back right now.
Beautiful shot.
I'd say that's a pretty good bounce back.
Great shot. Yep.
Such a smooth stroke with a high backswing, but just all efficiency of motion when you watch that. And then Gary does it sort of the same way, but goes about it in a different approach, and you'll watch a very deliberate lineup and setup here, and
very deliberate. Yes.
Is that a good way to put it?
Yes, and very good at repeating it.
Very consistent in the setup.
Yep. He doesn't rush it for anybody. He'll get there when he gets there.
But it works for him.
It sure does.
Yep, and the results are there. Of course, what an outstanding 56 years of bowling in Western New York for Gary Kinyon. Numerous awards, numerous Hall of Fames, Lockport Bowling Association Hall of Fame, Greater Buffalo Association Hall of Fame back in 2008, New York State Bowling Association Hall of Fame just last year in 2017 as you look at the Castellone Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram scoreboard, and we need about 3 pages for all the achievements and accomplishments of Gary Kinyon.
Right, and what's interesting is you're looking at 52 300s and 35 800s, and again, 35 800s is a giant number. But he's bowling a lot longer than Mike Zarcone, and you just see the amount of scores and the amount of strikes that Mike Zarcone has thrown in his career. It's overwhelming.
I have a lot of respect for Gary because, I mean, obviously he bowled years ago when things were all different, and he's advanced, obviously in age, but his knowledge of the game and his talent in the newer game is right there, just with everyone else, and that's not easy to do. A lot of people the game changes and they don't change. They stay their way, and he's come right along with it.
Well, you know what Gary does diligently, and that is practice. So he's got brand new equipment. He has to learn what those balls do just like everybody else does and how to adapt them to his game. So you're absolutely right. And he's taken the time to learn it and use it to his advantage.
Been a student of the game for many years.
Yep, and it takes a lot of practice. People don't think you need
that.
to practice with these scores the way they are, but he's living proof that yes, you do.
What do you think Gary would say the biggest change over his 56 years of bowling has been? Would it be the equipment?
Absolutely.
Yeah, no
absolutely.
question.
And it's probably to his advantage because that little bit of that you might lose as you get a little older and you're a little stiffer and you can't stay down as well. You're not as low to the line as you might have been when you were younger. The balls have kind of compensated for that. And if you're got a good ball driller, as he does, Jack does his stuff, who knows his game, and you stay within your parameters and don't try to change and try to hook the whole lane, but just use what comes out to your advantage, which is what he's done. It's proven you can continue to compete.
We're going to be back with more Beat the Champ bowling action in just a minute. Welcome back to Beat the Champ.
So a second open frame for Justin in the 6th has started to separate the scoring here, and right now Justin's struggling a little bit as he leaves himself an even more difficult challenge. Meanwhile, Gary's run 5 in a row here on him.
Well, here's the difference between these high performance, higher rev rate performers versus someone is a little simpler than Gary, who's got a lot of forward roll. He's leaving formations, and Gary is, getting a very steady roll because of the forward roll. And when you watch his ball, you can almost see the forward rotation of it as it's going down the lane. And that forward roll
is benefiting him.
It doesn't create any jerky motions. And when you see something like this where it becomes a little bit wet dry or drier to the right, that forward roll will actually counteract any kind of jerky response off that dry area.
So 3 open frames for Justin, 5 strikes in a row now for Gary, looking for 6, and he won't get it. Still as active as he ever has been, Gary Kinyon bowls at Alley Brandt Lanes in a league there, bowls in the Senior League at Transit Lanes, and bowls in a regular league at Alley Brandt Lanes up in the Lockport area, which is obviously where Gary's from.
Oh, this shot right here.
And he misses the spare, so that's an open in the 7th for Gary.
And yet he still has enough pins. Nope, he needs a little bit more.
Yeah,
there's still a up to there. I see
now
that
you
looking
see
at the
up,
scoreboard.
Because of the open frames, we got an up-to-date look at the Castellone scoreboard there with the sizable edge for Gary.
Right, we're looking at a potential score for Justin of 193 if he's managed to throw the next 5 in a row.
Again, like we were discussing before, he's playing to the left side of the lane, and he hasn't done that until back there. And it just, sometimes you
Right.
gotta shake a little
Right.
rust off.
Don't forget, we have qualifying going on this weekend at the Jamestown Bowling Company for next month's shows, and our top qualifier in the round of 24 wins a television valued at $500 from Dirt Cheap TV. Tony Dolan was the winner of the TV here at Fredonia. We will see Tony on our doubles show in 2 weeks.
It'll be a little fun to find out how they pick their partners and what made who bowl with who. I'm sure there's some
Can we read
strategies
anything
involved
into
there.
who picked the partners who picked who, or?
I don't know. We'll start a little battles as I do my interviews, maybe.
You'll get to the bottom of it, I know you will. And now back to striking for Justin Sokolowski after the 2 open frames.
Did it look to you like he changed balls? That ball is a shinier surface.
That was a good change because
Little late.
Yeah.
Just, like I said, his potential is 193, and Gary's only going to need, pins,
fill up,
really.
yeah,
He
pins.
just needs to stay on the lane for 2
yeah,
frames.
Throws a 9 count, he's good.
So Justin Sokolowski, who made a very impressive debut at the 246-213 win over Andy Rettig, will have to fight to qualify his way back in to get a second win, likely. Whether he'll make the trip down to Jamestown or not, we'll find out.
That's
One
a tough.
thing, go ahead, you go.
I'm sorry. The one thing we were just going to say is, as you see, he just hit 8 for the first time in the match, and now he's off on 7. And as bowlers, you struggle sometimes. You find one lane you can hit. I just bowled last week, and I struck at one lane all game and couldn't hit the other one. And then all of a sudden you'll find the other one, and
And
you
the other
lose
one,
the
and
other
you
one
lose the other
disappears
one,
on
right.
you.
And there's no rhyme or reason.
No, and you can't
figure
figure it
any
out.
of it out, can you?
They're just subtly different, and if you try to make a move on one, see that it works, kind of use that on the other one, it can actually throw things off even worse.
Right.
You really got to look at them as individual lanes, not a pair.
And a big strike for Gary Kinyon in the 9th frame that should go towards clinching the victory for him. So Gary Kinyon, who we haven't seen in a little while, but we certainly know is one of the most entertaining guys that we watch and one of the best guys that we watch, not only is back on the show, but back in the win column and ready for a matchup with Matt Zazowski. So Gary Kinyon is going to come up with the win here over Justin Sokolowski. We'll let Gary finish out here and get a good look at him before we take a break and get you ready for match number 3. Yeah, just couldn't get that pin to come knock the 10 down, so a little more work to do for Gary. His 3rd career, well, I don't want to say career because he had a whole bunch of them in the 80s, but 3rd win here on Beat the Champ since we've been back in the last 3 years. Yeah, he didn't like it, but he got lucky there. You heard that? I think that was an uh-oh that I heard right off as soon as he threw it.
We've all done that before.
Yeah, so one more here for Gary, and he'll post up his final score and move on here. We've had nothing but interesting matches here at Lucky Lanes, and even interesting within one lane to the other, but every match has had a certain level of entertainment, which is good. We like that.
And a change in winners. We're not having
Has
it's
anybody won 2 in a row here
getting
yet?
a little momentum going here.
No one has won 2 in a row yet. So, it's been win one and one and dones here for the winners. We'll see if Gary Kenyon can change that. It's a 2-26 on the board for Gary Kenyon, enough for him to beat Justin Sokolowski. We'll check in with Justin, get you ready for match number 3 when Paul and Sue return here to Lucky Lanes in Fredonia. We're right back after this. Final score in this one, 226-151. Gary Kinyon with the win over Justin Sokolowski. It's bowling in a nutshell, right? You look great in the first one, knocking all kinds of pins down, and then kind of struggling in match 2.
Well, absolutely. It just goes to show how quickly the lanes can change and how fast you have to recognize when they change. Pretty much the reason I gave the match away there. So,
So debut here on Beat the Champ. Sum up the first 2 matches in your first appearance.
Oh, well, it's a lot easier than I thought it would be, that's for sure. So I'm pretty satisfied.
Did you hear that? A lot easier than you thought it would be, huh?
Not what I usually hear, but congratulations, nice bowling. Thanks for bowling.
Love the confidence. We're going to see plenty more of Justin on this show, I can guarantee it. It's Gary Kinyon and Matt Zazowski, match number 3, coming up on Beat the Champ.
I'm on Beat the Champ with Matt Zasowski. What was once a familiar face? We haven't seen you in a little while. It's nice to have you back. What have you been up to?
Just bowling a lot of regionals still, so I haven't been able to make a show or bowl a show in about 6 months. So I was off this weekend and nothing. I came here to bowl and made the show. So
And here you are. So success in the regionals. Now, and the regionals, you bowl on a sport shot on those?
oh, definitely. They're a lot harder patterns. Surfaces are tough. Yeah, they're quite hard.
So when you come to a tournament that's house shot based, as this one is, does it seem all that much easier to you, or is it still a challenge?
No, it's sharper. I am sharper, so it should be easier. But you still got to get the pins to fall and carry, get the right matchup. So I guess it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, I thought that your day of announcing kind of might have been the thing that I don't think we've seen you since you announced our match. Have we?
No, it's been about 6 months.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to watching you bowl again, Maddie. Good luck today.
Thank you.
All right.
A couple of outstanding, long-time, high-level Buffalo bowlers in match number 3. Gary Kinyon, the winner, against the challenger, Matt Zasowski. Matt making his 12th appearance here on Beat the Champ. 12 wins and 8 losses in those 12 different show appearances. Last time we saw Matt was at Allie Brandt Lanes back in the summer of 2017, so it's been a little while.
Yeah, I believe that he broadcasted for us and never came back.
Right. We scarred him for life when he actually called me and Janelle and everybody else and John DeShulo bowling.
That's right.
He needed 6 months of, he needed to have attended a recovery, special recovery center somewhere for bad bowling, for witnessing bad bowling.
I think when you took the golf club out, that was enough for him.
You think, yeah, when I punted the ball down the lanes might have been enough for him to run away and never want to come back. So now to Gary Kinyon, who comes off that impressive win over Justin Sokolowski, looking to make it 2 in a row, and he'll leave the 10-pin in frame number 1.
Great shot there. Just, I don't know, he could have done anything much different. You know, just a little more high flush maybe.
So we get another kind of match of contrasting styles here a little bit. Matt, certainly big, strong, powerful, throws the ball very hard. Gary, the tactician, you know, who is effective in a much different way.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how Maddie approaches lane 8, which we've seen to be a little more reactive than lane 7.
Yeah, we are kind of getting to that point now where both of the lanes are having their characteristics and personalities sort of pop up, right?
Yeah, definitely.
That happens on every show. We are always talking about that because it's just the way it works, right?
And the newer equipment exaggerates that as well.
You know, it's funny, you would think about, well, why can't the lanes both be the same, right? Why can't we get a show where they're both exactly the same?
But people don't throw it the same every time.
Well,
I mean, you
okay,
make
there
good
you
shots,
go.
you make bad shots, and this is what we thought was the tighter lane.
Yeah. Boy, that was almost a really unusual leave that I don't know that I've seen a 3 pins
5,
across.
7, 10 is not
5,
common,
7,
no.
10. That was almost that.
Well, that is the dreaded hit in bowling.
I would guess he didn't come out of that like he should, like he
Right,
wanted
that's
to. That's
probably
usually
right.
what happens.
One of those situations where your hand gets a little sweaty in the ball and you don't get any lift on it. That is what would create that reaction.
You know, when you let go of it, you're like, uh-oh. As soon as you let go,
So you can tell right away.
Yeah, because there's no like lift with your fingers under the ball that gives it that.
You just hope you catch it flush and get away with it. But sometimes you don't.
All right, so it's a 5-10 split challenge here for Gary Kinyon.
Very makeable, very makeable.
One of those splits that is much more realistically makeable.
Absolutely, he just has to be a little bit more on the outside of the 5 pin.
You want to kick that pin over and take the 10 out.
But
so.
if you do hit that pin right, it will take that out.
So an opportunity here for Matt Zasowski to capitalize on after spare and open in the first 2 for Gary, the 42-year-old from Tonawanda, full-time occupation as a chef. And a big strike, frame number 2.
Those lanes are different in a way. We did talk a little bit about what he's been doing since he hasn't been, we haven't seen him on Beat the Champ, and he's bowled quite a few regionals, which he always does. He competes on the, the semi-pro, I guess, regional circuit, and they will always see sport shots, and that will prepare you so much better. These lane conditions, these changing conditions seem like child's play next to the changing lane conditions on
you get on a
sport shot.
Pattern, no question, they are tough.
Good. I'm glad, because I thought maybe he was mad at me because Matt thinks I don't like him, which is not true at all.
Of course not.
I'm glad that wasn't the reason why he hasn't been on the show.
But in your favor, if you're bowling on a sport shot, quite often it sharpens your skills quite a bit as well.
Well, we've seen that. We've seen that on some of the occasions where the sport shot has been part of Beat the Champ, about, that the guys who bowl on those kinds of shots consistently and bowl at higher levels are usually better prepared for it.
The moves are so much simpler. Oh, great shot.
Keeps ringing around that 10, doesn't he?
I just competed myself on the the men's nationals in Syracuse, and it is one of the more challenging sport shots that, there's different variations of sport shot. This one is extraordinarily challenging because they strip the back ends every single.
I mean, people often on the sport I go and bowl at in May myself, and you get on that sport shot and you miss a little outside and you may not see the head pin on the right, and you yank a little left and you'll miss the head pin going away from it. I mean, completely miss the head pin. You see good bowlers doing that.
Yeah, which doesn't ever really happen on a house.
No, because what you consider to be, an error in your game is so subtle. Shows the subtlest difference in how you throw it will be magnified on that lane condition, because it's set down in strips. It's not set down as a pattern that's gradual. They're in strips, and then there's so many different people throwing different balls that it makes these strips so exaggerated.
So you almost can't read it as a whole. You have to read it as these individual strips.
The action will continue on Beat the Champ in just a minute.
Instant replay on Beat the Champ is brought to you by Transit Lanes and Keglers. Join us for bowling, food, and drinks.
Welcome back to Beat the Champ.
It's hard to understand as the lay bowler, but it's based on the fact that all of those people, Team USA, college bowlers, bowl on those sport shots, and if they're at an advantage. If you put 5 of those people together who bowl on sport shots and are experienced on sport shots and understand those patterns, there's no way that 5 people that only bowl on house shots could ever compete. So, maybe the problem isn't separating people who want to bowl together, because these are expensive trips. If you want to go with people that you like and and you will have a good time with outside of bowling. Now they're going to kind of tear that apart because you're not going to be allowed to bowl with these people anymore. So what's going to happen is yet to be determined, but maybe the solution isn't telling you can't bowl with people you like. Maybe the solution is giving people more practice on that pattern, or even mellowing the pattern a bit. We're gonna have to see how that plays out over time, because people will stop going.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it's leveling the field a little bit and making it a little more even.
That's what they're trying to do. But now someone like Mike Valero, who bowled Team USA when he was younger, can't bowl with say a Jack, because now they're both considered pros in that team, even though Mike hasn't done anything professional in 30 years.
Right.
Hypothetically, they're separating these people, and I get it from a competition standpoint.
Which will affect some teams. There's a lot of teams out there that have a lot of talent on them.
Absolutely.
By the way, Gary Kinyon's on a run of 4 strikes in a row here, and starting to take control. Well, not take control. I mean, Matt Zazowski's bowling well as well too, but there's a nice little run here for Gary as he approaches frame 8. Oh, we had like a 3-hop back after that one, and I think he thought he was going to get that.
Well, he knew he liked it off his hand, and he had that pop on it, which actually, gave him that extra oomph that probably stoned that 7 pin.
So the string of consecutive strikes comes to an end for Gary.
And we've got a 3-pin match. Unless Matty strikes, he can up to 13, but as of 6 frames, it's a 3-pin match.
Spare for Gary. Don't forget, qualifying is going on this weekend and next weekend in Jamestown at the Jamestown Bowling Company for next month's Beat the Champ shows. We've got qualifying that's coming up 3 different times tomorrow on Sunday, and then, of course, the final weekend of qualifying next weekend with the top 24 roll-off on Sunday to set our lineup for a week's or a month's worth of stays at the Jamestown Bowling Company. We'll see who our defending champion Fredonia is. And of course, the top qualifier in all of those qualifying opportunities in Jamestown, top qualifier in the round of 24, wins a television valued at $500 from Dirt Cheap TV. Strike in the 8th frame for Matt Zasowski. Builds him a short, small lead at the moment.
Little 13-pin lead, right?
You can put the pressure on with another strike, though.
Absolutely.
There's Janelle Sabin on the Castellone Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram scoreboard as we come down the stretch here of week number 2, final match of the day.
What a great shot.
3 in a row for Matt. The winner of this match will advance on to next month's or next week's shows, where 3 bowlers are lined up and ready. Josh Nowak, Jeff Pullman, and Steve Dorbiala. Those will be the guys you'll see on next week's show. Who will they face? Will it be Gary or Matt? To be determined in the next couple of minutes. 8th frame, 9th frame now for Gary Kinyon. The sticky 10 pin holds up.
Yeah, he needed
really
that
did
one.
Need that one.
And that looked like another one where he didn't.
He liked it, but just didn't quite kick the 10 out for him.
Well, a little bit of a rough start to this match for Gary. Kind of put him in a bit of a hole with spare, open, spare. And then he rattled off the 4 strikes in a row, so, but just a little bit
outside of that
behind.
Outside of that 2nd frame, he's throwing the ball pretty well himself.
And there you can follow along and follow across with Gary's score as he approaches the 10th frame here.
He's going to need to strike out here to put any pressure at all on Matty. If he doesn't strike out, then Matty's going to win on the bench.
Oh boy, that 1 pin went sliding right by the 10, did not take it out, and that is going to clinch the victory for Matt Zazowski. So we haven't seen Matt in a couple of months, but he pops back on here and he comes up with his 13th Beat the Champ victory. It's going to be a win for Matt Zazowski over Gary Kinyon. We'll come back and talk to both guys and get you all set up for next week's shows when we return to Lucky Lanes in Fredonia. This is Beat the Champ. Well, the highest score of the first 2 weeks here in Fredonia belongs to Matt Zasowski in a 259-214 win over Gary Kenyon. Got yourself in a little bit of a hole early. Was that awfully hard to catch up from?
Yeah, it's hard to make up a split when the guy's throwing a lot of strikes at you.
Yeah.
I almost got there, but then the solid 7-pin, that did me in.
Yeah, well, we enjoyed just watching your body language and your reactions after most of your throws. That may be a show in itself, Gary. Paul, give him something to make him feel better.
Congratulations, nice bowling, Gary.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for bowling, man.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having us.
Great match, by the way, but we did a lot of talking back there about sports shot lane conditions, the change between 7 and 8. Did you see a difference between 7 and 8?
I Actually, no, I had them pretty much the same. It's just been a while for me on TV, so actually I was a little nervous, first time in a long time. Threw it okay, but the lanes helped. A lot of lane helped me get away with some stuff.
Does
So.
bowling on the regionals and that help you?
Definitely.
All right. Well, good luck going forward.
Thank you.
All right, well, we're going to see more of Matt because he's coming back for next week's show. 3 new challengers ready to see if they can't knock him down. Sue and I will preview next week's show and tell you all about those challengers when we return to wrap it up from here in Fredonia, New York at Lucky Lanes. You're watching Beat the Champ. Interesting to hear Matt Zasowski say he was a little nervous. As good as he is and as much success as he's had on the show, who's making him nervous, you, me, or Janelle?
Actually, Gary made him nervous. All those
Maybe it
years
was
of
Gary.
experience. Yeah, it was what a great match. And, you know, I kind of knew that there was going to be a lot of mental stuff going on here, and how these guys, you know, took on the challenges of the pair was going to show up in real big issue. And we really did talk about that while they were bowling.
Yeah, so Matt Zasowski will come back next week. 3 new challengers in line to try to knock him down. It will start with Josh Nowak, Jeff Pullman, and Steve Dorbial. So it's going to be another good week of shows next week here in Fredonia.
Yeah, let's see if Matt Zasowski can break this curse where these guys can't get 2 in a row.
That's right. Yeah, we have not had anybody win 2 matches in a row yet. It's been one and done all the way through the first 2 weeks. We'll see if that changes. You better be watching to find out yourself. We'll talk to you next week from here in Fredonia. Thanks for watching Beat the Champ.